Madam Clerk, it's 3 o'clock and it looks like we have at least 4, maybe 5 city council members. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone to this special meeting of the Richmond City Council. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Bates. Councilmember Bates. Saw him earlier. Okay, Councilmember Jimenez.
Presente.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Here.
Councilmember McLaughlin.
Sorry, here.
Councilmember Willis.
Here.
Councilmember Bates. Are you here? Mayor Butt.
Here.
Okay.
Would you play the public comment instructional video, please?
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted via Zoom pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Urgency Measure Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. The Mayor will call upon council members, staff, and other guest speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Council members, staff, and guest speakers participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Community members participating via Zoom wishing to speak should use the raised hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the mayor or city clerk will call upon them at the appropriate time. Community members will have up to 2 minutes to speak, 3 minutes for public hearings. After the speaker's time expires, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Community members participating via phone will be called upon to speak by the last 4 digits of their phone number. Public input and participation are of the utmost importance to the City of Richmond City Council. Therefore, it is important for public speakers to be ready to address the council when called upon. Public speakers are requested to state their names and city of residence, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received before and during the meeting in accordance with the COVID-19 public comment guidelines printed on the meeting agenda will be entered into the record and published at the clerk's office webpage. If authors of written correspondence would also like to speak on the item, they should raise their hand when prompted by the mayor, and the city clerk will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. The meeting can be seen on KCRT's TV channel and is being streamed on Zoom, YouTube, and KCRT.com. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the City of Richmond City Council.
Debido a COVID-19, esta reunión se llevará a cabo a través de Zoom en conformidad con las provisiones de la medida de urgencia del gobernador de la Ley de la Asamblea 361, que suspende ciertos requisitos de la Ley Brown. El alcalde llamará a los concejales, a los empleados de la ciudad y a otros invitados a hablar por nombre. Por favor, hable claramente y diga su nombre antes de dar su comentario. Se recuerda a los concejales, empleados de la ciudad y otros invitados participando a través de Zoom con sus cámaras encendidas que sus actividades son visibles al público. Miembros de la comunidad participando a través de Zoom que deseen hablar deberían de usar la función levantar la mano, en inglés raise hand, o marcar *9 si están participando por teléfono. El alcalde y la secretaria municipal llamarán a los oradores en el momento apropiado. Miembros de la comunidad tendrán hasta 2 minutos para hablar y 3 minutos para temas de audiencias públicas. Después de que se expire el tiempo de orador, se le bajará la mano y el micrófono será silenciado. Miembros de la comunidad participando por teléfono serán llamados para su turno usando los últimos 4 dígitos de su número de teléfono. Los comentarios y la participación del público son de suma importancia para el Consejo Municipal. Por lo tanto, es importante que los oradores públicos estén listos para dar sus comentarios al Consejo Municipal cuando sean llamados. Se pide que los oradores públicos indiquen sus nombres y ciudad de residencia, pero proveer dicha información es voluntario. Comentarios escritos recibidos antes y durante la reunión, de acuerdo con las reglas designadas para comentario público durante el COVID-19, imprimidos en la agenda de la reunión, serán ingresados en el registro y se publicarán en la página web de la Secretaría Municipal. Si los autores de la correspondencia escrita también desean hablar sobre el tema, deberían levantar la mano cuando sea pedido por el alcalde, y la Secretaría Municipal los llamará en el momento apropiado. Se realizará una votación nominal para todos los puntos de acción. La reunión se podrá ver en el canal de televisión de KCRT y también se transmitirá en Zoom, YouTube y kcrt.com. Gracias por participar en una reunión de Consejo Municipal de la ciudad de Richmond.
Next item is statement of conflict of interest. Does anybody have one? Next item is agenda review. We have 3 items on the agenda. Does anybody want to tweak any of them? I don't see any requests.
So Mayor, I'm sorry. When the item comes up, I will have some modification, but I have no changes in the order or anything.
Okay. So the first item coming up is item F1, Ryden Road Encampment Sunsetting Program. Would you read that, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, item F1 is to mandate the sunset date of the Ryden Road Encampment as August 31st, 2022. Approve a 5th contract amendment in an amount not to exceed $135,966 with Housing Consortium of the East Bay, and extend the contract term to August 31st, 2022 for a total amount not to exceed $695,966. Authorize the city manager or her designee to negotiate and execute contracts for the administration of flex funds with a community-based organization, and continue collaboration with Contra Costa County H3 and core programs to provide needed supportive services to residents at Ryden Road prior to abatement.
Okay, is there a staff report?
Yeah, Mayor, before we get started, if we can ask KCRT to let Christy Saxton
Okay,
into the panel. Okay,
And
sorry about
also, and Mayor Butt, we have a presentation, and also KCRT has some drone footage. Do you have a preference in terms of what you would like to see first, the presentation or the drone footage?
no, I'll leave it up to you. It's your present.
Okay, KCRT, if you're ready now, can you put up the drone footage? Thank you for making this available for the council and the community. So just to provide some context, Mayor Butt and members of the council, Richmond community, throughout the last several months, I've made it a regular habit to visit both Ryden and Castro. The footage here looks pretty good today. Frequently when I visit, there are several cars parked adjacent to the businesses and a number of people outside, as well as a lot of articles throughout the median there. So just wanted to make sure for members of the public and members of the council who haven't been able to visit the site that you're able to get a sense of what Ryden looks like currently. And this is right off of Central Avenue, which is one of our primary business corridors. And as you can see, the situation is not clearly not an optimal situation. We want to make sure to provide the residents with an opportunity to transition in a thoughtful manner from this site. After the video concludes, then we'll go to the PowerPoint and we can look at the Castro site when we get to the third agenda item. Okay, KCRT, if you can please go to the PowerPoint now, provided by Irene, that would be great. So while they're queuing up the PowerPoint, we have a PowerPoint for this item. We're going to go over the recommended action, background information, synergistic policies, services, resources, expenditures, and policy options. This is one of my photos from one of my previous site visits. That's on the front page there. Next slide.
Shasa, I'm sorry to interrupt. It looks like they're not using the most recent one that Irene sent.
That looks correct. So we'll pause while KCRT uploads the presentation from Irene, and I'll keep talking as to not waste time. I want to be thoughtful of everyone's time this evening. So I just wanted to start with an explicit acknowledgement that this is a very complex public policy and public health matter that we're dealing with. That's it's really multifaceted. And as your city manager, I want to acknowledge that this has been really difficult. I think, at least for me, when I think about health and all policies and I think about GARE and the work that we're doing here, it's really important in these really defining moments that we also, sometimes we need to apologize for historical things that have transpired. And so I feel like with this item this evening, I think it's important that I acknowledge to residents who during previous drug epidemics, such as during the crack cocaine epidemic, that a number of people of color were incarcerated and their families were not provided with adequate resources. And that led to, that was a result of historic structural and institutional racism. And that this evening, I think it's important that we recognize that there is an opioid crisis happening in the United States, and that we are attempting to provide support services to all of our residents, irrespective of what their current capacity is. And that can certainly, that's certainly challenging. But I thought it's just really important as we're starting this conversation this evening that we recognize that I think part of what has also been a struggle is thinking about historically how things have been dealt with where people were incarcerated, and moving to a new model where, you know, we explicitly acknowledge that it's not a viable public policy strategy for people to live in a dilapidated vehicle, and that we want to provide and work collaboratively with the county to get people whatever services they need for whatever issues they self-identify, and that we recognize in the past society, and in particularly here in communities like Richmond, people have not been provided those services. And so we're really trying to do better. And I just feel like that's really important to acknowledge because so many people were impacted during previous times when there were really difficult public policy issues that were, and you know, obviously hindsight is 2020, but definitely it feels like there needs to be an acknowledgement that people historically haven't been treated equitably, and that we're trying to do better now moving forward. And for some folks, because there is also a different component to this current epidemic, some of what may or may not be completely related to the item this evening, but I just feel like it's important to explicitly acknowledge that connection and that those historical issues. So with that said, we as staff have an interdepartmental team that have been meeting and conversing about how can we sunset the encampments, and recognizing that we're trying to do so with a finite amount of resources, and that we have to do so collaboratively with our community partners with Contra Costa County. And really also want to thank and acknowledge the core team for all their hard work day to day interacting with residents. I've seen them in action, and I'm very appreciative of the work that they do. Next slide. So by way of background, before I became city manager, there was a sole source with the Housing Consortium of the East Bay provided for $560,000. And there was originally going to be a sunset of Ryden in December of last year. So we've got a little typo there on the date. And the council decided to give a little bit more time. And since that time, there's continued to be challenges, and it's not just challenges that for the people that are currently residing at Ryden, but also the adjacent businesses, the adjacent park users, and also a challenge for civic resources. So this is an example of what happens sometimes. Frequently, our electric shop is trying to figure out how to keep the lights on because at intersections and in various locations, because the lighting and electrical has been tampered with. Next slide.
Hey, Shasa, I think, go back one slide, please.
Yes.
I think your second bullet point, the date.
Yes, it's 2021.
2021, yeah.
Yes, we apologize. Next slide. So another thing that we also want to note is the employment data. So we're now, we keep thinking this pandemic is going to be over, and it never seems to actually, it subsides and then it comes back. But one thing that is consistent is that the unemployment rate has dropped significantly. So at next slide, what you'll notice is that from where we were at our high with unemployment data, we've come down substantially. And so that's actually a good thing, because it means that if people want an opportunity to work, employment and training is here to help them get on a pathway to having a career. And so I spoke about this earlier about health and all policies and around our GARE work. Also want to let the council know that we are working on several RFPs to implement several of the items that you have contained in the budget to ensure we follow proper procurement policies. Also want to acknowledge that the city of Richmond has done an extraordinary job of providing affordable housing. We have 27 standalone housing developments citywide with 3,788 units. And we have units coming on at Hacienda, and both Nevin and Meestrom, we're going to be adding additional units there. So really appreciate the council's commitment to the Housing Authority and to expanding our affordable housing portfolio throughout the community. Next slide. So this is a list of all of the housing and the appropriate area median incomes and the number of units. And you'll notice that they're all north of the 580 freeway. Next slide. And with this, I can turn it over to Chief French. Or Lena, did you want to pick it up from here?
Yes, happy to. So good evening, Mayor and council members. So the item here is a summary of calls for service related to police. As you can tell, over time, there's been an increase in calls for services at the encampment and the surrounding businesses. In 2021, there was a total of 433 calls for service. The key reasons were disturbances, suspicious vehicles, parking violations, and security checks. As of this year, we've continued to see an increase, and those are related to parking violations, disturbances, and security checks. So I will pass it now to Chief Montoya. Next slide.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. So the first one that is listed there, well, it just disappeared. from my screen. There it is. Was to provide assistance during abatement, and mainly what that consists of is provide that fire and life safety navigation that's conducted during these abatements. And that could be anywhere from the assistance with the removable propane tanks, other type of incendiary items that people use there to light their barbecues or other things in motorhomes. So that's mainly the assistance that we give when we assist in these abatements. The other is provide training on how to use extinguishers. This is done mainly on a one-on-one basis, but there has been times where the fire marshals and or the fire marshal and inspectors from the fire prevention division here in the fire department have done group type of education also. So that also is conducted. In terms of call for services, 22 calls in 2021 and 23 calls in 2022. And these are mainly incidents requiring what we term as EMS, emergency medical services, but they also include, there's, believe it or not, vehicle accidents that occur in this area, also rubbish fires. There are some vegetation fires, and but these are the main bulk of incidents that we get at this encampment, and also that of Castro. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this. Thank you.
I wanted to ask the question, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Chief, the California Penal Code mandates that all vehicles that are unlicensed, inoperable, that is parked on any street in the state of California is subject to being towed. My question is, why have not we adhered to the law as prescribed by the vehicle code? And am I correct in my statement about vehicles inoperable on streets?
That's probably a question for the police department as opposed to the fire department.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chief.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Apologies.
I'm not as good as looking as Chief Wrench is.
Oh,
Thank you. Well, that is what the vehicle code states, that any vehicle that's parked on the street needs to be in operable condition. When we were first entering COVID and we started to get the encampment around Ryden, my department was directed not to tow vehicles from that particular area, as well as the Castro area. So those two sites are the sites that we are not towing vehicles, even if they're inoperable. Although there have been some vehicles that have been towed, but it's been in coordination with CORE and other services. But these two sites are the ones that we have not typically just been going and towing vehicles from. So we are continuing to tow from the rest of the city.
well, my observation is that once the Berkeley closed the university homeless area, we had an influx that came to Ryden Road, many of whom never lived in Richmond. They come from all parts of the country, I guess. And have we ascertained as to how many of those individuals are actually former Richmond residents? Are we sort of responding to the entire Bay Area problems?
I believe that CORE has collected some data. I'm not sure if the city has actually collected data on where the city of origin people originally came from, but I do know that there are some Richmond residents that are in Ryden. Lena, do you have
Okay.
more specific info?
Yeah, the majority have lost housing in Richmond. And so we can provide more information. I don't know if you want us to continue with the PowerPoint, but the majority have lost housing in Richmond.
Lena, can you look up the specific number out of the 26 people that are in the program and then may I suggest that, and then we can hear from Public Works and then back to you, Lena? Through the chair,
Yes.
Mayor Budd, if that's okay. And also we have Contra Costa County here, so we want to make sure that they get an opportunity to present.
All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and staff.
Okay, you want to proceed with your presentation?
Yada or Hugo, whoever's going to present this slide, please.
Good evening, Yada Bermudez, Public Works. The public work resources spending on these efforts include abatement, approximately 840 hours and $60,000 on abating at Ryden. Collected and disposed of approximately 63 tons of material from the site. The street division has assisted in providing moving and placing gate rails and installation of appropriate signage. The total estimated cost for those efforts has been around $11,146. That concludes my presentation.
Next slide. I think it's Christy.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me today. Some of these slides are a little bit duplicate, so I will try to go through them and happy to answer any questions that we can. So for us, Contra Costa County at Health, Housing, and Homeless Services, we're really proud of the partnership that we have been engaging with the City of Richmond, Housing Consortium of the East Bay, and other providers such as SOS trying to support the encampment. Several of the ways that we do that, first and foremost, that is through our core teams, which Ms. Curl has already mentioned. These are our teams. The majority of our folks that we hire are people with lived experience. And so these are peers who are going out. Our teams are on the ground 7 days a week. I'm not saying they're always at Ryden 7 days a week, but as the need arises, they're going out. Their job is to really meet the basic needs of the folks living there. And they're really building their relationships to get folks engaged in our coordinated entry process. So really to help them, tell them what services are available in the county and help them get linked up to those. Some of those services that are available are what we call prevention and diversion. And while these folks are literally homeless, they can still access this program. And so it can be dollars for people that are first time or just returning to homelessness, trying to get them back into some type of stable housing through financial assistance. We have our emergency shelters, which will have some slides talking about how many beds countywide. We do have, out of our 7 shelters, I believe 4 are in Richmond. So we do have a strong showing there. And then we have our care centers, one being in the city of Richmond at GRIP, where people can go again for food, basic necessities such as showers, they can get mail there. And again, that is an access point for our coordinated entry system. So these are the ways that people can very easily engage into our broader continuum. Next slide, please. So within our coordinated entry system, some of the other programs are, again, is rapid exit. And this is our ability to assist folks who have maybe identified a housing solution. We recently were fortunate in our county to be provided through HUD emergency housing vouchers. 200 vouchers came out into the county, and the community made the decision to target long-term shelter stayers and folks that are already in permanent supportive housing that no longer needed that service, which then opened up additional units within our county. So if someone had a voucher such as that, rapid exit would be an ideal way to help them get them out off the street and into housing with some financial assistance. We also have rapid rehousing programs, and this right now in our county is targeting folks, our families that are on CalWorks and veterans, and we work with several providers and fund them to do this work. And so it is working with these eligible people to help find and rapidly get them housing, providing them housing navigation and move-in assistance. And then eventually that rent would taper down, but they would continue to receive services while receiving the rent. And then there's the permanent supportive housing. And again, we have some slides, I believe, later on talking about how much permanent supportive housing we have in our county. H3 alone, only has a handful of units, but there are many providers in our county that provide permanent supportive housing, and people access that through our coordinated entry system. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a quick question,
course.
Ms. Paxton? How many people at Ryden Road has CORE relocated in the last year and a half?
CORE doesn't relocate folks, they provide the referral, and then whichever access that person is needing, they then work with that provider. So I would have to go back to my data team to see how many people actually took the referral and then went through that process. I believe, Darren and his team have been on the ground really working with folks, so he might have a better data around how many people have left and not returned. I know last December, there was a handful of folks that did go into the Brookside shelter and did not stay long. And so folks often will go to a placement and then leave again for a variety of reasons, being they don't want to live by the participant rules at that shelter. They want to be with family, whatever the reason is, they choose not to stay.
Well, did any of those people come back to Ryden?
I believe so. Yep.
Mayor, but we have data on slide 16. We'll be there in just a moment.
Again, so this is, I just won't go through, I won't spend too much time, but I've already talked about our access points with CORE. People can also call 211, go to our care centers, and then they go through a level of assessment, really just trying to gather some quick data and do an initial assessment to determine, oh, you're a vet, we can put you here. Oh, you're a family, we can put you down this path, so on and so forth. And then that gives us the prioritization of knowing what they're eligible for and as quickly as possible, getting them linked up to that resource. Next slide. And again, I'm happy to send this out. It's just another way. This is a flyer that we send out to people, and you'll see over here some of our providers. I'm sure many of whom you have heard of that are in Richmond. And we really work hard to maintain these partnerships, even if we're not funding them, such as Bay Area Rescue Mission, and really just try to work hand in glove as much as possible with folks. Next slide. And again, this is just another thing that CORE does. These are all the services that CORE is able to offer. We find that emergency supplies is a big one. Again, we help with encampment abatement with our local police departments. We provide linkages, help people get on benefits, help them get IDs or their waivers. We do a lot of transporting, linkages to behavioral health and others. So not everyone needs that, but we will provide linkages, and then direct placements into shelters or warning centers. Next slide. So this shows you just since January to present, the variety of calls that CORE has gotten over the last 9 or so months. And so it shows you a lot of them are, like I was saying, emergency supplies, you know, down to garbage bags being given, and a lot of different shelter placements. You'll see that the Best Western and the Marriott began to really taper off. That is because the funding that was for those placements was FEMA due to COVID, and those wound up. And so as of the end of June, we no longer have any of our COVID supported funding placements. We had over the course of the pandemic, 5 different hotels that we were able to open up, but the funding is now done with that. So all of those shelters have been closed. I'm incredibly proud of our team that if people wanted a placement and a referral somewhere else, we had it. We had that for everyone. Not everyone took us up on those referrals, leaving the hotels, but we were able over the course of winding those down to do that. So that just gives you an idea again of all the services that CORE is providing every day to folks. Next slide.
Thank you, Christy. I'll pick it up
no
from
problem.
here. So this summarizes the expenditures that have currently occurred under the Housing Consortium of the East Bay contract. As the council may recall, when the program started, the budget was $560,000. And of that, there was a grant that was provided by Contra Costa County of $260,000 that was matched by city funding of $300,000. So from March 2021 to March 30th, 2022, the total expenditures are $513,000. There's about $46,000 left, which the April invoice did come in and is paid. So for expenditures through April, that will exhaust pretty much the full contract amount. So there will still be expenditures related to May, June, and July that are included in the cost of the amendment that's being considered by the City Council. The majority of the expenditures have been related to site services. So this includes shower services, trash pickup services, and then as well as showers at the site. We also had some startup costs for abatements. The one type capital cost is rental office. Site services include security as well as porta potties. And then personnel, we're down to 1 HCEB person providing support. The original project started with 2 people providing support at the site, but in order to keep costs down, we're down to 1 full-time FTE. Next slide, please. So this summarizes some of the expenditures that were related to unhoused interventions that were proposed and approved by the council in fiscal year 21-22. So if the council recalls, there was about $1.8 million that was recommended within the budget that from the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. There were kind of 3 key programs that were proposed to be funded. One was the Safe Organized Spaces Streets team, as well as their shower power services. And so a contract was approved by the council that totaled $983,000. And expenditures as of June was 584. So there's a current balance of 399,000. In addition, the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force recommended funding for a transitional village that would provide interim sheltering options for unhoused residents, such as a tiny cabin community. The city did issue an RFP looking to do sites analysis, as a staff had already done evaluation of potential sites for that. Unfortunately, there were no responses to the RFP, so that money remains unused, and there have been no expenditures related to the transitional village. So that balance remains. So in total of the $1.8 million, I'm sorry, the numbers are a little bit off, but there was about $584,000 that were spent as of June 30th.
So I have a question that that line that says SOS street teams / shower power. Isn't that the contract with Rebuilding Together East Bay North?
Yes, Mayor, that is the contract.
So why do you call it SOS street team shower power?
Because those were the programs that were funded under the unhoused interventions. The actual contract was with Rebuilding Together,
Okay,
but those were the programs.
okay.
Lena,
Okay.
Mayor Butt, and through the council, through you as the chair, I think it's also important to note that when staff has a budget for something, if a contract term is multiple years, then in the subsequent years, they have to continue to request appropriations. Unless it's a capital project, then it automatically rolls over. And so that was, we basically continued to budget preliminarily in our budget before it was known that we were going to be, now according to traditional economics, we're technically in a recession. And so I just want to flag for the council that that although these funds weren't spent, they have to be reallocated at the next subsequent budget year. And so there were placeholders in the budget for fiscal year 22-23. And that's how and why we're having this conversation today, is because then we have to do a reappropriation essentially of those funds for specific programs and the appropriate procurement. Go ahead, Lena.
Okay, next slide. So for council's consideration this evening related to the sunsetting of Ryden Road Encampment, staff is presenting 3 options. The first one would be to fund an amendment for Hceb that would cover expenditures from May through August 31st. It does include security costs of about $22,500 per month. And that would, KCRT, do you mind going back? That is one option, is to only fund that. Option 2 would be and that would be through August 31st. So that would basically sunset the encampment August 31st. No additional support services would be provided aside from Hceb and core, which we already fund through contract services. Can you go back one more slide, please? Option 2 would be to give 1 additional month through September 30th. So that increases the expenditures for additional month. Option 3 would be to also extend it to September 30th, but add funding for a subcontractor to support Hceb's work with collaborating and would cover expenditures for them from August and September. Next slide. So with that, here are the recommended actions, and we're happy to answer any specific questions.
Okay, questions for council members. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, city staff, for that very thorough presentation. I would like to share some of my comments, and I really want to hear from the public speakers as well. So I hope we can move quickly to the public speakers. But I just want to say that I'm really appreciative that we all want to move forward to create healthier and safer spaces for our unhoused community. My view is that we should agree to do a September 30th sunset. But I also want to say loud and clear that exiting people isn't the whole picture. We need to allow people to exit Ryden with dignity. So we're an urban environment and we share the issues, problems of other urban environment cities. We have a responsibility to help those in dire situations in our city. Cities all over the Bay are taking responsibility for finding solutions as cities and not relying solely on their counties. The county in Richmond is a big place, and Richmond is only one place, one city among many. And of course, we want to continue partnering with the county, but I just don't think it has the capacity to resolve it on its own. Now, there may or there may not be spaces in shelters on any given day, and staying in shelters has its limits. People often can just stay the night, and they have to be out throughout the day before they can come back at night. Plus, there are time limits for how long they can stay in a shelter in terms of weeks or months. But there is an endpoint where they have to leave altogether. So when people are in situations of trauma, that doesn't always work for them. Instead, they find themselves back on city streets in no time flat. That's not to say that shelters don't provide some help, as I believe they do, but they're not the solution for everyone, and their space is limited. And unhoused residents, like housed residents, are not a monolithic group. They have distinct and separate needs. So where are we at right now? Well, Collaborizing, a local nonprofit, started working with the Ryden residents, helping to hear their voices and assess their needs. Their approach is to work with direct engagement of these residents to help them each create an exit plan. They were hoping for more time to do this, but I feel that September 30th is a good deadline, and with enough resources, this sunset can and will and must happen. Now, also, more flex funds are needed to effectively implement the exit plans. Funding for rental assistance, for example, is needed ASAP to accomplish this September sunset. I think it's really important that we have some version of the Housing First program to be implemented for Ryden residents, perhaps through Richmond Community Foundation, partnering with the Rotary Club as a subcontract of the Hceb contract. And there are other avenues of assistance that people need as well. So I think the city manager and other staff members have come up with a good start here by proposing option 3 with a sunset for September 30th. But again, more resources are needed for this intensive 2-month Ryden sunset to be successful. Option 3 suggests extending the Hceb contract through September 30th with the following funding, which I think is insufficient. It's seeking, as already you have heard on the slide, $169,958 for the Hceb contract covering May through September, plus $17,397 as a subcontract with Collaborizing for August and September, for a total of $187,355. So Collaborizing has been working in direct engagement with these residents at Ryden to assess their needs and create an exit plan for each resident. And they need to continue to do this to have a successful and dignified exit for Ryden residents. This is an intense process and very time consuming. I believe strongly that Collaborizing needs more funding to handle this work. In addition, as I already stated, more funding in the form of flex funds are also needed to effectively and fairly complete this sunset of Ryden. Now, Castro has a $4.8 million grant, thanks to our staff for pushing forward with that. I believe it is a fair argument that Ryden residents raise when they say Castro is getting $4.8 million and they have not received anything close to that. So I'll be making a motion after we hear from the public speakers to support option 3, which has the September 30th sunset with some additional funding for both collaborizing and for additional flex funds. But I want to hold off on the details of my motion for now until we hear from the public speakers. I think it's really important we hear from the speakers. But again, I think we're on the right track. I think with just some additional funding, we can make this happen and happen in a dignified way for each of the residents of Ryden. And of course, then the focus gets shifted more intensely to Castro. So thanks for the opportunity to share that statement, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and thank you, city staff, for working on this, and acknowledge that this hasn't been an easy work to do. And thank you, county staff, for being open and willing to work with us in this. I believe county is set up to help with that. It has its own services, but I know that also the need is greater than before, and this is why we are stepping up to make sure that the quality of life of residents and the solutions that are presented for our house residents are greater. I wanted to ask Kristen from the county just a couple of questions so we understand in more detail the county services that you are mentioning. One thing is that you mentioned that you have emergency vouchers. And I would like to say how many of these has been allocated and how many are left up to date, and how many of these has been allocated for unhoused residents in Richmond. This is my first.
Yeah, that was an example of some new vouchers that came into our county through the pandemic. And they are all accounted for at this time. Not saying that they are all in use. People are still, their paperwork is going through. And just to be clear, those vouchers did not come through H3. They came through Housing Authority of Contra Costa County. Coordinated Entry has been supporting the Housing Authority, but they're the ones that hold the vouchers, and they're working with all future residents. But all of them, last I have heard, which was about 3 weeks ago, have everyone's been identified. How many people from Richmond have gotten those? I'm not sure, but I can find that out and let you know, but I don't know off the top of my head specifically because it was a county-wide program of how many Richmond residents those went to, but I can definitely look to that. Overall, H3 runs, you know, again, when I say run, we fund providers to run the majority of our services for the county, and that is emergency shelter, interim shelter, transitional. We also support 211, who is, you know, our call center that people can reach out to directly to get referrals and resources. We provide money for, which I talked about earlier, rapid rehousing, diversion prevention, rapid exit. So a lot of one-time or short-term rental assistance for people, as well as some of our providers that are helping with housing navigation to help navigate that landscape. I think one of the hardest things, and I know a variety of people on this call have run into it themselves, for folks that we're working with that don't have any type of sustainable income, it is very hard to find a place to that will rent to them. And so what is open to them are our shelters or our new interim housing site out in Pittsburgh. It's 172 units, but we are housing around 200 people a night. And again, just because it is in Pittsburgh, it's open to everyone in the county. And that is a place for people to get, you know, a breather from living on the street, while the staff, which is Bay Area Community Services, BACS, is the provider, that they are then helping find stable housing for all of those residents as well. So, and all of that is accessed through our coordinated entry system. And so that's why our core team is so vital, because it is hard for folks often to trust that, oh, anything will happen. I don't want to go into a shelter for a long list of reasons of maybe why someone doesn't want to come in. And I know Darren can definitely speak to this. You know, people don't want to maybe give up their RV. They want to come in with a partner. I'm really happy to announce that during the pandemic, when we had to close our shelters, we reimagined them. So we now allow couples to come in together. We now are able to allow them to bring their pets in with them. We no longer have time limits on our shelters. So we really went into the community and said, what is keeping you from coming in? And where we were able to within regulations, we tried to shift those rules or create spaces in our shelters. Now it's not dormitory style anymore. We now have sleep stations. So there's privacy for people. They can lock their belongings up within their sleep station. And there are walls for privacy. So really trying to create a better living situation so people can come into an emergency shelter to then take that next step. Still isn't perfect for everyone, and it is going to be their choice at the end of the day. So that's why we try to offer, through coordinated entry, a variety of programs, because not one solution fits everyone's needs. And there's going to be a variety of needs out there. And so that's what we're trying to do. And it still, the need far outstrips all of our resources combined and beyond. We are in a humanitarian crisis. I'm not going to pretend any differently. And every single one of our dollars are allocated for. And it's been a pleasure working with Lena and her team and Michelle Milam of really trying to be as collaborative as possible to see how far our dollars can stretch. And every day it's still not enough. And that's no one's fault here. It is what we're up against and we're really struggling with is not having enough resources right now at our disposal.
So thank you so much for that. Just want to follow up just to get more information. So you mentioned, so there is some emergency voucher, but there is the Section 8 vouchers as well, right? You can like, because I don't want to take that much time, if you can just say the difference between that and then talk about how many people apply for these emergency vouchers. You say that you had 200 vouchers. How many people? And how many people are on the list for the Section 8 vouchers? And how many do you really have?
Again, H3 does not hold any vouchers. Vouchers don't run through us. We only run coordinated entry that assesses people for their eligibility for the vouchers. So for some of that data, you would have to seek out information from Contra Costa Housing Authority or Richmond. And regarding the emergency housing vouchers, the community was not H3. The community decided who they wanted to target with those vouchers. And it was long-term shelter stayers and long-term people within permanent supportive housing that no longer needed that intervention. And so then we worked with the providers in the community to go into those programs, the shelters and the permanent supportive housing programs, to seek people out and say, you're eligible for this. Do you want that voucher? And it was then, then we would work through all their eligibility to make sure they've actually qualified under HUD. And then once they had that voucher, then it came time to find suitable housing. That emergency housing voucher, there are a couple of things that are a little bit different about those vouchers. There are no services attached to those vouchers. So it is strictly a voucher only, rent only. People could then use and take them anywhere in the country. And in fact, people did. I know we had families. My coordinated entry manager was telling me a couple of people that moved to Pennsylvania. And that's not always something you're able to do with certain vouchers. You can't go anywhere. If it's a project-based voucher, you can't take it somewhere else. But with these vouchers, they were then able to relocate where they had family and stronger support networks and take that voucher, and it freed up another unit within this county. So it ended up being a real win-win. So again, with many vouchers, there is some type of at times service light, but a service attached to it should that person need it. These had no services attached. And one of the downsides to these vouchers, once someone was in housing, if they were unfortunately evicted, typically within Section 8, that voucher comes back into our county. With these emergency housing vouchers, they vanish. They don't go back to any county. They just no longer exist. So our hope was to really ensure the folks that were utilizing those vouchers were ready and had no need for ongoing services and really had strong, long-term sustainable income that would really ensure that they were going to be able to have that voucher, and that voucher stayed with kind of in play, because once those vouchers are gone, they're gone. Unlike a Section 8, it will come back into the
Hey,
community.
can we move on? We've been at this for an hour. You guys just talk and talk and talk. Let's
Can I ask the last
see if some
question?
other city council members have questions or comments, okay? You and Gail have dominated this whole conversation. I think you've said what you have to say, and let's move on. Are there other council members that have something to say?
Mr. Mayor, I said 2.5 minutes worth.
Well, we've been at it for an hour, and it's mostly been, it's not just you, it's the staff and county staff and
Thank you.
everything.
It's not just me.
Nobody knows how to get to the point here anymore.
2.5 minutes, I tell you.
Talk and talk. Okay, Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, it may take a lot of talking, but it's necessary. So I know you're trying to be expedient, but we need to be thorough. These are people we're talking about. I understand that you're basically what I would call a backbone organization, an organization that has other organizations working from you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we're a county department that funds, for the most part, funds other providers. We run shelters and a couple of other things, but other than that, we fund the providers to do the work in our continuum.
Okay, thank you. Now, the other thing is that I've heard in many instances that you don't have the data, but that you can get it. Who tracks all the data? Who tracks the efforts that are made at Ryden Road?
Yeah, it depends on what it is. I mean, specifically around vouchers, you have to go to Housing Authority. That's not my department. So unfortunately, I don't have that. Between myself and Darren's team at Hceb, we can pull that. I don't always have the data right at my fingertips for a question, but I can pull that. I have a full team that tracks all the data that comes into our continuum. I just need a minute to ask them to pull that sometimes.
Okay. Now, the other thing is that I'm curious as to how many man hours are actually dedicated to Ryden Road. I know that there's one person from CORE, one person from Hceb, and so the question is exactly how can we measure how much they accomplish? Because we have there's a lot of needs. They're varied, and I don't see how any one person from both organizations can meet the needs of the Ryden residents. I understand that collaborating actually collected over a ton of garbage on Sunday, and then they also gave out vouchers. They've also been doing a lot of surveying that doesn't just collect information, but surveying that goes to the core of the reason that they're there. And if we want to transition them out, that's what we need to know. So I know that there's been other surveys done, and a lot of the surveys have been very detailed, but I'm wondering whether or not they've been asking the right questions. I think if we want a transition to happen, we need to fund the people who actually are working with the Ryden people. So I have more to say, but for the sanity of the mayor, I will cut myself off now.
Mayor, you're muted.
Councilmember Bates, do you have a hand up?
Yes, thank you. I'm curious from the staff's perspective. As I drive around the city, I see zero homeless in Hercules, a little bit of homeless in Pinole, a little bit more maybe in San Pablo, but a lot of homeless in Richmond. My concern and curious is, obviously this is a national problem. If we didn't get grants, there's no way in the world that this city could afford to address this problem. So the question to the county is that, what kind of funds do you receive from the state or the federal government? And why isn't more funds directed to the city like Richmond that seem to be overflowing with homelessness as opposed to some of the other jurisdictions? I don't think we got, maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't think we've gotten any money from the county. What money we have received, I think, has come through grant money. And maybe I'm mistaken, but that's just an observation. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure. So my department is 95% grant funded, and we push the majority of that out. So for example, HUD, we get funding that goes directly out into the community through providers. Again, of the shelters that we run and fund, 4 of them are in Richmond. Our care center is in Richmond. So there is, I guess I'm trying to understand when you say dollars aren't flowing into Richmond. They are. They're in services. They're in different types of programs. We gave, Lena talked about it already, $260,000 to the Ryden Road Encampment through state funding, our Hceb funding, and then we use the rest of that to fund the core team that then provides services, not just to Ryden Road. They were split. Richmond and San Pablo shares a team. And so it's split. And then half of that team has to serve all of Richmond. We do have other cities that fund a full team. And so they do have then just that team for that jurisdiction. But the county provides services to everyone in the county, not just Richmond. Richmond city staff fortunately put in for that encampment grant, which they got 4.8. It was what was it, Lena? The 4th or 5th highest in the state. That's a big deal, and we're working with them to figure out how to abate that encampment. And so this work it's very hard and it takes a long time, but quite a few dollars have gone in. A lot of our shelter in place hotels were open in Richmond. And so that served that community. So I would, respectfully disagree that quite a few dollars have actually gone through Richmond. And homelessness it's a irretractable issue right now. It's a problem that we're all trying to put our arms around. But we definitely have been supporting and getting as much of our funding out that we possibly can.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else before we go to the public speakers?
I just have one quick question. Through the chair, we understand that a lot of these houseless people have substance abuse problems, and I'm curious, what services do you have for mental health and people with substance abuse issues, and where can they go to get these services?
Yeah, it's a great question. We partner with behavioral health partners here in the health department. And as our core teams are going out and assessing folks as they are seeing the need arise, we work with our partners at behavioral health, and they have a whole other set of housing and services that we don't run. So there's more at our disposal. For example, there is a vacant building in North Richmond that I'm working with behavioral health right now on to convert into 30 units of housing for folks that are that have a mental health diagnosis and have homelessness experience. And so it's really meeting a double need here. And so we work pretty collaboratively with them, but once they're referred over to behavioral health, they are then working with them. And I'm happy to put you in touch with anyone you want over at that department. Substance abuse, same with alcohol and other drugs department. And so that is, again, the beauty of CORE. When they come out, we make an assessment and get people hooked up with the appropriate resources. And again, they have to want to access those resources and referrals.
So before we go to public speakers, I'll give you my take on this. I haven't seen him for a while, but some of you remember Andre Shoemate used to come to city council meetings, and he would say, if you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you always got. And I got to tell you, where you guys are heading with this is a classic case of doing what you always done, and you're going to get what you always got. What this city council majority has directed and has done at Ryden Road in the last year and a half has been an absolute colossal failure. It just none of it's worked. And you guys are going back and you're doing what you always did. For instance, you're extending the contract with Hceb. Hceb has been in gross violation of their current contract ever since they started. And I don't know how you can justify giving them more money and extending their contract to be as ineffective as they've always been. And then as far as relocating people, I'm going back, I'm looking at an email from John Joya from sometime late last year. I don't know, maybe November, December 2021. And he said every resident at Ryden Road was offered a shelter bed and only 2 accepted. And 22 were offered a hotel room and all of them declined. So people at Ryden Road have been offered alternatives a long time ago. And you guys just don't have, you just don't have it in you to say, take it or leave it. You just want to keep pushing money at it and pushing money at organizations that are failing what they're doing. Now, let me tell you something. I have arranged for 49 rooms at the Civic Center Motel. They're ready right now. And if the city wants to put up the money to pay for, say, a year's residence there, we can move. How many? I think in the staff report you said there's 25 people at Ryden Road Can you confirm that?
Yeah, there's 24 now,
Okay.
Mayor.
We can move those 25 people into the Civic Center Motel right now. And forget spending all this money for the next 3 months on people and organizations that are ineffective. I don't know why you keep going down this road. So I just don't understand it. And you know, for the money you've already spent on Ryden Road, you could have put everybody there in an apartment for a year. But we just keep doing what doesn't work, and then we wonder why it's not working again. So maybe it's time to go to the public speakers. And I see Nanette, you have a hand up. You want to say something before we go to public speakers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have made an inquiry to the Contra Costa Housing Authority, who administers the vouchers in Richmond and the entire county, and I'm waiting on a response from Assistant to the Director, Tony Yusufari. I just wanted to put that out there, that I have requested that breakdown of how many vouchers have been issued and to what cities.
Well, while I'm on a roll, I just want to add Contra Costa County and CORE to my list of complaints. Contra Costa County has been totally ineffective, and CORE has been totally ineffective, and we're paying for it, you know, in transitioning people out of these camps. So I'm going to go to public speakers, and then we'll.
Mr. Mayor, just one quick question to Mrs. Saxton. It's my understanding that efforts like the mayor have indicated have been offered to a number of individuals, not only Ryden Road, but Castro. And the argument has been that they don't want to go into facilities because there are disciplinary requirements. They can't bring in drugs and they can't become too much alcoholic and so forth. How valid is that statement, to your knowledge, in terms of why people refuse to accept housing and accommodation when it's offered?
Yeah, I would disagree with the substance use and alcohol statement, but I think that the majority of folks that are at our encampments are hesitant to come in because there is nowhere for them to store their vehicles. And that has been a really big deterrent. And I will say Lena and her team worked around the clock trying to find safe parking and pay for parking for these vehicles for folks so they could safely store and be able to come in. And that was very difficult and very costly to do. And again, you know, Darren can speak to this as well. He helps with several encampments through the Bay Area to other reasons of why folks won't come in. But I do believe that is one of the major ones of why folks don't want to come in to the places we have available to them.
Well, you know, Richmond has a warehouse that would store every vehicle at Ryden Road, and we pay for 24/7 security for it. And I've brought this up before, and nobody wants to do it. So I just don't understand it. Let's go to the public speaker.
Mayor Butt, may
Yeah.
I please? So I just want to acknowledge that it's been reported to me by city staff that we are having a serious opioid epidemic in our community. And I want to acknowledge that it's greatly impacting city staff, and we are not trained and do not have the expertise in this arena. And so we are all trying, with the 555 people we have here remaining, to be good public stewards and to protect the health and life and safety for all Richmond residents, including those that are unhoused. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is definitely a real crisis, and that there are lots of examples in the built environment of what's occurring that everyone can see firsthand. So, and I don't think it's just related to people not wanting to give up their vehicles. I think it's a multi-pronged challenge. And I would be curious, Mayor Butt, if you could please tell us what was the rate you were able to negotiate at the Civic Center Motel? because we obviously have a number of options here. So it would be great to know what those costs are.
I'll find out.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the public speakers.
One moment, I think like Darren has his hand out, and then you make an statement about storing vehicles, and I want Dina to answer that.
Thank you, Claudia. Councilmember Jimenez, appreciate that. And this is Darren Lowndes from the Housing Consortium of the East Bay, and we are the contracted provider at Ryden Road, as has been mentioned in the in the staff report. And I want to address directly Mayor Butt's comments about us being in any violation of our contract. I just want to make it very, very clear that we had certain contract objectives. Our objectives were around getting folks engaged into the HMIS system. Our contract objectives were around providing certain site services. Some of those services provided through subcontractors, some of them provided directly by Hceb, and also making every effort to get people referred to other housing options. Hceb has fulfilled all of those requirements. Is there any room for improvement? Yes, I would say we learned a lot in the process as well, because what we found out is that many of the options that we were offering folks for housing were not the options that people wanted. And that put us in a unique situation of trying to find ways either to shoehorn people into things that they did not want to do. And we found out very quickly that didn't work in the long run, or continue to look for other resources and find other ways that we could get people housed. And I just want to really make it clear that my organization, our organization, despite our efforts, have received quite a few unfounded statements in these public settings. And no one has been able to actually say, this is what we did wrong, and this is why. They've just been general statements. And I would like that to end until people could actually have a dialogue about this. I know there was a concern about the funds and how they were allocated. I believe that's been addressed. All the funds have been accounted for. And we have managed, again, that was one of our other contract objectives, was to follow our budget, and we did so. So if there's no direct allegation that I can actually respond directly to, I would wish that these comments not be made in public forum. Thank you very much.
Well, since you brought it up, Mr. Lowndes, let's talk about it.
Well, you brought it up, Mayor, but yes, let's talk about it.
Well, you responded to it and you wanted to talk about it. So.
Oh, yo. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Well, first of all,
but we do have public speakers. I mean, make whatever points y'all need to make, but let's not lose decorum. That's starting to get a bit.
No, he brought it up. He brought it up, and I'm going to pursue it. So first of all, your contract required you to service both Ryden Road and Castro, right?
Yes, but it was, the original contract was for Ryden Road only, and Castro was added in the 11th hour with no additional funding. There was no staff was assigned to Castro. There were no site services assigned to Castro through our contract.
That's not what your contract said. Your contract listed a bunch of services, and it said they would be provided to both Castro and Ryden. And I understand you didn't have enough money to do it, but I'm just bringing it up, a contract's a contract. And
Mayor and Council, I don't think we've agendized this for this discussion. I'd suggest that we move back to the agenda item. And if you want to talk about this more, we could agendize it.
All right. Okay. Let's go to the public speakers.
Heather and Mayor Butt, if I may, part of what staff.
Oh, come on, city manager. Let's go to the public speakers and move on. If the city attorney is not going to let me talk, I'm not going to let anybody else talk. Let's go to the public speakers.
Yes, we currently have 4 speakers, and they are Jesse Turan, Ramon Quintana, Ebony Blake, Amanda Jenkins, and Kevin. Jesse Turan, you may begin. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes to address the council.
Okay, so my name is Jesse Turan. I am a resident of the Ryden Road Encampment. I first wanted to mention Councilman Bates's comment about enforcing the laws regarding our vehicles. The California State Constitution decrees that local government may not harass people living in vehicles if no other options are provided to them. With regard to our other options, I keep hearing that we have been offered shelter beds or we have been offered other options. No, we have not. No, we have not. I personally, I have 2 pit bulls and a partner, and the options offered to me are not sufficient for my needs. Another thing is that my vehicle is stable. And what you want me to do is trade in my stable home, the place where I live, for an unstable solution. A motel or shelter is not stable and it's not pleasant. Now, when the original plan was made to give us 6 more months of time here, it was done with the understanding that that the council would find a safe parking space for us. Like a place for us to be, a place for us to exist. You can't sunset Ryden Road if you don't give us a safe place. Also, you have not released the funds that would allow us to fix our vehicles in order to go any place. So how are we to do that? The part for my bus costs almost $2,000. How am I going to fix my bus and leave if the money that you already said you were going to, you need to come through on your promises. You need to come through on your commitments to us before you can kick us out.
Our next speaker is Ramon Quintana.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Ramon Quintana, Co-Director Collaborating. We advocate for and the residents of Ryden Road in addition to leading the Clean Ryden Road program. Although you may not hear all the residents speak, know that they are present. They are frustrated, confused, and longing for direction from this council on what to do once the transition away from Ryden Road. You hold their lives in your hands. Any decision made this afternoon that does not include adequate provisions to properly sunset Ryden Road is inhumane and unrealistic. You will simply be scattering residents from Ryden Road onto the streets of Richmond. I urge you to issue the flex funds that are already set aside for the residents. Allow for time to adequately sunset Ryden Road. August 31st is just way too soon. September 30th is more realistic. Fund collaborating to do the work of assessing residents' needs and implementing transition plans. Currently, there's only 1 full-time staff at Hceb serving Ryden Road. No other organization or county agency, no matter what you heard here tonight, is dedicated exclusively for Ryden Road. And finally, provide flexible relocation funds so that residents can begin new lives with dignity away from Ryden Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ebony Blake. Ebony, you may begin.
She left away from the mic. Could you come back to her or?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Our next speaker will be Amanda Jenkins and Kevin Canimore. And if you could please clarify if both Amanda and Kevin will be speaking.
No, it's just Amanda.
Okay, you may begin.
My name is Amanda Jenkins. I'm currently a resident at Ryden Road, also the founder of the Castro Encampment. And I also advocate for everyone out here. Mayor Bud, thank you. Thank you very much. That deal at the motel is definitely suffice for me in my situation. However, And I thank you for that option. However, I don't believe that that's the only option that should be available. There's, like Jesse said, there's other people here that have different situations and that would not be suffice for them based on their needs. So I think that because all of these people are different and all their situations are different, that options need to be different. And I'm thinking it needs to be open enough, that everyone, maybe a little bit of everything needs to be available, for those who think that this motel thing is suffice for them in their situation, they should be able to go. And there's a handful, at least, that were sitting here listening to Mayor Buck put that out there, and they all, would accept that option. However, that's not all 24 people. Everybody out here has a different story and a different background and needs a different option. And I believe that, in order to get them out of here quickly and get us somewhere to be and to actually come up with a solution, you're going to need to use all of these resources and all of these options because everybody needs something different. But I do thank you, Mayor Butch, for that option. I actually heard more from you tonight as far as solutions go than any other time, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. We'll go back to Ebony Blake.
She's still away from the mic. So just, I guess that'll be it. But we thank y'all very much. Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Leah Murray. Leah Murray.
Good afternoon, City Council members. I first of all want to thank Council Member McLaughlin and Vice Mayor Martinez for caring about the residents at Ryden Road. I'm very grateful for your commitment and your service to the people. I also want to thank the city manager for showing how clean Ryden Road was on the drone display. Just last Saturday, through our Clean Ryden Road program, we've spent 5.5 hours at Ryden Road and we removed over 4,000 pounds of debris. And so I just want you to know that we are advocating for the residents of Ryden Road. We work with them directly. We provide incentives to keep the road clean. And we have helped the people learn to advocate and to speak to you all. And I hope that you can see that difference. And I hope that you notice that we make a difference. I also wanted to mention that although the Contra Costa County has mentioned that they are working to serve members of the community, please let it be known that that is a coordinated entry system and they don't directly serve the residents of Ryden Road. As mentioned earlier, although we support CORE and we like them, they have only one person for the Richmond San Pablo team, and that agency does not directly support Ryden Road. The only organization that currently supports Ryden Road directly is Hceb, and they have one full-time staff. If you allow funding for collaborating to do assessments and to develop assessments plans, then we will have 2 full-time staff dedicated to Ryden Road. So please let the residents leave with dignity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Peyton Silquette.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. Really appreciate this opportunity. I think what's most important and what has already been stated is that this plan is fundamentally different, right? There is a plan. Right? The residents have worked and been in tireless meetings with city council members and also with city staff and have come together to create a plan that they have all agreed to execute it in order to meet the sunset date. They know the expectations that are of them, and they came here today, and those who have been able to come and speak have spoken. Those who, because of phone issues or other things, are not able to speak, but they are represented and they have been met with and touched. So please let the plan come out and follow through with it. Fund collaborating, which has the relationship and the trust to be able to execute the assessments that they have been working day in and day out to create in collaboration with the residents to make sure that the questions are thorough. This could potentially be an assessment that can be the model for other assessments, right? But it's collaborating, and they created it, right, in collaboration with the residents. So this is a unique opportunity for the city of Richmond to become a beacon of how to do this, to not just have conversations about unhoused residents without them, but to what it looks like to intimately include the unhoused residents in the planning process and in the execution of this, recognizing that their voices not only matter, but trusting them that they'll be able to solve their issues. All they need is some help. And I think that's what we all recognize. We may have different approaches, but we know that everybody needs help from time to time again, because we're all really only 1 or 2 checks away from not knowing where we be able to stay the next night. So thank you for this. Please support the plan that Councilmember McLaughlin and Vice Mayor Martinez are proposing and fund everything.
Thank you. Our next speaker is LC.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Leticia Chavez. I am a North Richmond resident. And I just wanted to share that the encampment is not like the best way to live, but it might helps people to stay in the place. If the city council or the city has the resources to help these people and have assigned some money for them, why don't just give it to them? Why don't you just keep the work and help these people so they can have the funds and they can move, to wherever they have to be. And I think that helping, collaborating, it's a really good way to do it, because I see that direct connection with the encampment people, with Ryden and with them, and taking some responsibility, helping them and keeping the place like how it looks is really nice. One thing that I have to say is, I feel what Mr. Bates said, Councilor Bates, is like he notices that it's a lot of people that a lot of houseless people in Richmond and not in other cities. I have to say that I feel the pain that in Richmond, North Richmond, got an encampment allowed by the city or allowed, but the city in a really very distressed neighborhood. And if the funds are there, if there is some money, why not just to get together and use this money to help these people? That way that the houseless people is living there are not conditions for nobody to be living in. Set up some rules, and it will help them, and it will help other residents of that neighborhood too. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Terry Dunn.
Good afternoon. I'm Terry Dunn, a volunteer with Faith in Action East Bay. Thanks for taking the time today to work on this issue that can change people's lives. While it's important for the Ryden Road encampment to close, the people there need enough time and support for what the city manager called an opportunity to transition in a thoughtful manner. So well said. The plan needs to be more than ending one problem while creating new problems. Because if we're rushing to an August close for Ryden, it'll just shift residents to other parts of Richmond, with another encampment popping up because people's problems haven't been solved. As you examine the plans and options before you today, please consider 3 questions. Is the plan effective? Is the plan humane? Is the plan fair? Before closing Ryden Road, each resident needs to be adequately assessed, and everybody needs an exit plan. Mayor Martinez staff, Vice Mayor Martinez staff, and collaborating have developed a thorough assessment that can assist in the process. In recent months, collaborating has built positive relationships with the Ryden residents, as others have mentioned, resulting in cooperation and trust. So let's leverage that success. The proposal in the agenda, Proposal 1, recommends August closure and an exclusive contract for Hceb, which is doing a better job out there currently. Thank you. But more time and more support are needed. So I would like to encourage consideration of closure dates of at least September. And the contract should look more like option 3 in the agenda, which includes a subcontract for the essential work by collaborating. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And that was our last public speaker.
I see somebody named Terry Dunn with a hand up. Is that a public speaker?
That was just Terry Dunn right now.
Okay.
Mayor,
Okay.
but may I make a brief statement before the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to acknowledge that our finance department does not have capacity to provide direct payments to unhoused residents or residents citywide. We have capacity to pay vendors and city staff at this juncture. Number two, so far we've spent approximately $1.2 million. We started with 40 people. We're currently at 24 people on Ryden. Unfortunately, one person has died and there has been instances of arson. That's why we've left the security as an optional component. In order to move forward, staff is requesting that additional criteria are added to the service provisions and ensure that there's a relationship between people leaving Ryden and compensation. So that way we need to, with this thought in mind, there need to be specific metrics and criteria similar to the contracts that are in the Environmental and Community Investment Agreement. So I'm asking for authorization to modify the service plans and the scopes of work and the payment provisions to ensure that we have the appropriate criteria to facilitate whatever the council decides. But what we have currently in the staff report is a draft and a work in progress, and it needs additional refinement. Fourth, I want to acknowledge, so Mayor Butt indicated that the per hotel room rate, we're trying to see if it can get down to $18,000 per year for one room. And then the fifth thing is that I want to acknowledge that this is going to be an ongoing challenge, that I appreciate the council wanting to address this issue, but we as staff anticipate this will need to be something that is a work in progress. We want to sunset Ryden, but we do recognize that providing services to the unhoused this is not a magic bullet, and that given the situation before us, that this is going to be ongoing. So I just want to make sure that's clear so that we're managing expectations. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion, please? I know we have two other items, and I really think this is in line with what people have said, with what the city manager is saying, what you've said. I think the idea of the Civic Center Motel is a wonderful option. So this is my motion. So I move we approve option 3 with additional funding for a September 30th sunset for Ryden Road, and that we direct the city manager to work out the details of an extension of the Hceb contract with the following funding: $169,958 for Hceb itself, $35,000 for a collaborating subcontract, and $200,000 for flex funds. And I'm going to send this motion to the city clerk so she has it. That's a total allocation of $404,958. And of course, that's my motion. The Civic Center Motel could be utilized for those flex funds. It could be Home First, it could be Ryden vehicles that may need some, whatever is needed. City manager will dispense those funds, as she has said, needs to happen in a responsible way. So again, I'm going to repeat the motion so everybody's clear, and I won't give my commentary this time. I move we approve option 3 with additional funding for a September 30th sunset of Ryden Road, and that we direct the city manager to work out the details of an extension of the Hceb contract with the following funding: $169,958 for Hceb itself, $35,000 for a collaborating subcontract, and $200,000 for flex funds, with a total allocation of $404,958. That's my motion.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment.
Go ahead with what it is.
Yes. Considering the fact that collaborating is hands-on labor intensive collaborating with the residents, I would ask that we allocate 60,000 to collaborating and then divvy up.
I don't, I don't accept that because it's only 2 months. I think this 35,000 will generally be for staff. I think the city can pick up some of the trash that collaborating has done so well. And, you know, I think we can pick up some of the services that collaborating has been doing. And the 35,000, they basically have said 17,000 per month allows them to continue to do the assessments and exit plans. So that's where I came up with that 35,000. I think the city manager wanted 17,000. This is double that. I think it's, you know, I realize it would be great to have more money, but given our funding needs, and that we need to save some of the funding that's been allocated for
Just say no,
RFP.
just say no and let's move on.
Okay.
Um,
Well, then I'd like to make a substitute motion.
you're second the motion?
I'm making a substitute motion.
Substitute motion, okay.
Yes. And
First
that's
of all, is there a second to my motion though before?
I'll second it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, now you could, yeah.
okay. And so I'd like to make a substitute motion, and that is that 58,000 goes to collaborating, and then what were the other numbers in your motion, Gail?
At the same, the 169,958 for HCEB and 200,000 flex.
Okay. So then 169 to HCEB and how much to collaborating in your motion?
Was
to collaborating in your motion?
Was 35,000.
Okay, so then I move that we give 135,000 to HCEB, 58,000 to collaborating, and the 200,000 for flex.
Okay, is there a second for the substitute motion? I don't hear a second. Dies for lack of a second. Any other council members want to weigh in here? Councilmember Bates, go ahead.
Yes, I'm disappointed in the sense that we did not communicate with Berkeley in terms of how they were able to dispose of the individuals that were on the university parcel. Secondary, what is to prevent, once we go through this manipulations, that others don't come in and occupy the same location? One of the gentlemen pointed out that the likelihood that many of them, as you make your maneuvers, are going to wind up occupying other streets in Richmond. Until this city council come up with a prohibited efforts, you're going to pay one off and they will go to Carson or to Hoffman or to other streets. And it'll be the same individuals, most likely. No one has thought about that. And the question to the city manager, who seemed to buy into all of this, with all this paying off and everything, what is to prevent and stop the various individuals and others from relocating throughout the rest of the city? And what do you plan to do about it if they choose to do so? I'd like an answer.
Councilmember Bates, I share your concerns. And so I think when we have the criteria, if people want to have access to the funds, they're going to have to sign an agreement that with the criteria that they're going to have to abide by. I definitely, and we've had conversations internally about these issues. We've had conversations about procurement. We've had conversations and training around ethics and conflicts of interest. And for me, I want to make sure that it's clear to the city council. I get concerned when a service provider is directly advocating for a contract and we haven't had proper procurement. So what I was suggesting is that Leah Murray and her husband with collaborating get paid $27.88 an hour, which looks to be the hourly rate that is being paid to the site coordinator from Hceb, because I thought that would be equitable. I didn't think that it was fair that they were proposing $125,000 a year and $70,000 a year, that and the site coordinator in their budget is getting paid $58,000 a year. Normally, we don't have executive directors providing direct service to residents. So those are some of the things that were disconcerting to me. I have shared those publicly and with members of staff. And if the council, and I've directed staff to implement all sections of the Richmond Municipal Code. Right now, we just have one parking enforcement person. And so we're trying to be thoughtful in their work assignments and ensure that we're providing equitable service citywide. But we're definitely working to fill those two other vacancies. And I think that we have to be thoughtful with this transition, but we need to be firm that we need people to accept supportive housing.
Well, also our municipal code has a requirement for sole source contracting. And we haven't followed that with collaborating, and so.
Lena, do you want to speak to that?
Say what?
I was asking Lena if she wants to speak to that.
What is your question, Mr. Mayor?
Well, we have a process in the municipal code for procuring services on a sole source basis, and it requires a process that several people have to sign off on, and I don't think we've been through that process.
So the request this evening, should the council desire to add collaborating, would be to add them as a subcontractor to Hceb, which would not require the sole source.
Well, that is a sole source. Well, anyway, I don't want to argue with you. So
Mayor, but can we also include, if the council members are okay with it, that if we have families with children, we know that we have families with children throughout the city. If they are in need of emergency housing, can we please try to accommodate them as well if there's space available?
I don't think we have any children at Ryden Road.
But Mayor, I'm saying, just can we please allow children and families, if the family has a child and they're unhoused, can we please use these resources in the event that we
we're talking about Ryden Road right now.
Yeah, we can discuss that.
We have a motion on the floor, and I'm going to speak to it, and anybody else can speak to it, and then we're going to vote. But I want to go back to what I was saying before the city attorney tried to stop me. We're talking about extending a contract with a contractor who has grossly violated the provisions of an existing contract. And I pulled the contract up and I want to read it to you. And if Mr. Lowndes wants to dispute it, he can do it. But it starts out the service plan. I quote, "Housing Consortium of the East Bay shall operate a safe parking program at Ryden-Central and Castro-Hensley encampments in Richmond, California. Contractor is responsible for parking management services, coordinating program security services, regular engagement with program participants, and oversight of the day-to-day operations as described in the scope of work," unquote. So clearly that pertained to both encampments. The next page goes into more detail. It's entitled, quote, "Ryden/Castro safe parking contract objectives," unquote. Process objective: all site amenities will be available to all program participants as supplies last. And it goes on to talk about impact objectives. By December 31st, 2021, 100% of clients have completed a housing plan. Didn't happen. By December 31st, 2021, 65% of clients will have exited the program to stable housing. Didn't happen. By December 31st, 2021, 75% of clients are connected to primary care healthcare provider. I don't know whether that happened or not, but I doubt it. By December 31st, 2021, 40% of clients will have increased their income via employment, public benefits, or making lifestyle changes. I don't know whether that happened either, but I doubt it. By December 31st, 2021, 80% of clients will be enrolled in public health benefits. I don't know if that happened. Maybe Mr. Lowndes can tell me. But what's more important is that it goes into a lot more detail, and it talks about target program exit schedule, May to June 30th, 2021, 10 people. July 31st to August 31st, 2021, 20 people. Didn't happen. September 1st, October 31st, 2021, 25 people. Didn't happen. November 1st to December 31st, 2021, 25 people. Didn't happen. Total program exits, 80. Didn't happen. And then it goes on. It goes on to talk about reporting.
In the back room.
And it says Hceb will conduct a weekly census at the Ryden Road site. Didn't happen. Reports shall be submitted by contractor on a weekly basis with electronic submissions due Friday of each week. Didn't happen. Report shall include the following: total number of vehicles and program participants at the time of the report. Didn't happen. Number of participants who've exited the program since the previous report, and cumulatively with the outcomes for each. Didn't happen. And so it just goes on and on. And so what I don't understand is you have a contractor, and I'd be the first to admit that they had a tough job, and they've probably got some good reasons for not being able to do it, but they had a contract. And I don't understand why we're going to extend a contract with a contractor that is grossly underperforming. It's throwing good money after bad. But I know you guys are going to do it, so let's just get on with it. So let's go ahead and vote unless somebody wants to say something else. We have the main motion on the floor. We have a second by Councilmember Willis. Madam Clerk, let's call the roll.
Councilmember
Excuse
Bates?
me, you say that we can have some discussions, and I want to give my time to Darin to answer the statement that you made.
Well, I'm not, I'm not inclined to do that because we've already had public speakers, and he's, let's just vote on it. If he wants to respond, he can write you back.
To respond to your claims.
Madam Clerk,
Call for the motion. Call for a vote.
Yeah, Madam Clerk, let's call the roll and get this. We've been at it for 2 hours now.
Councilmember Bates?
No.
Councilmember Jimenez?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Willis?
Yes.
And Mayor Butt?
No.
The motion passes with Mayor Butt and Councilmember Bates voting no.
Okay, let's take
Mayor
up.
Butt, can I make one last statement? And it has to do with Darren Loynes. I think a lot of the security needs of these places are being provided by Hceb, and I thank them for that.
Right, his security guard sleeps all night in his car.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, well, obviously you haven't been around there. Okay, let's go to F2. R3F, Strategic Planning and Governance Advisor Contract. You want to read that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, item F2 is to approve a contract with Dalberg in an amount not to exceed $125,000 for a term beginning July 26, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023 to prepare a strategic plan and governance structure for the Richmond Rapid Response Fund and authorize the city manager to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the West Contra Costa Public Education Fund to accept a $25,000 contribution towards this work.
Okay, do we have a staff report?
Yes, if I can ask KCRT to share the PowerPoint. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm joined this evening with representatives from R3F and the Ed Fund, as well as Joe Doherty from Dahlberg. Next slide. I won't repeat the recommended action that the city clerk, so next slide. So just as some way of background, as part of the fiscal year 21-22 budget, the council allocated about $1 million of American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds towards housing initiatives. Included in that $1 million was $100,000 for Richmond Rapid Response Fund, strategic planning and governance structure support work. So in an effort to find a consultant for this project, the city issued an RFP via the city bids online system on March 11th, 2022. Next slide. As part of the bids online system, we notified 432 vendors. 24 vendors were identified as prospective bidders, meaning they downloaded the RFP. 4 total responses were received in response to the city's request for proposals. The responses were reviewed by a panel consisting of staff from Planning, Community Services Department, the Richmond Promise, RISE, as well as the Ed Fund. Following the review of the written responses, interviews were held with all 4 respondents. Dahlberg was identified as the highest ranked team, which includes a Richmond-based nonprofit, Empathy in Action, as a subcontractor. Next slide. The proposed scope of work, the work that Dahlberg would do on behalf of R3F and the city of Richmond would be to focus on a guaranteed income and economic security as the impact area for a long-term R3F program. The initial phases of the project would be to do community-led data gathering, so talking to members of the community about guaranteed income as well as economic security needs. In phase 2, they will develop a governance structure and strategic plan in parallel that will also engage residents throughout the process. In phase 3, there will be an implementation plan as well as a timeline that will develop a high-level roadmap to operationalize the governance model as well as the strategy that's developed. So following the completion of phase 3, Dahlberg will act as an advisory support for the Richmond Rapid Response Fund as it rolls out its structure and processes during implementation. Next slide. So staff is recommending that the contract with Dahlberg be approved in the amount of $125,000, a portion which is to be funded by the West Contra Costa Public Education Fund, and would authorize the city manager to execute an agreement to accept those funds that would be contributed towards this work. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from council members? Councilmember Bates, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't drop my hand.
Okay, anybody else? I had a couple of questions. So how is the board of directors for the Ed Fund selected?
Robert, can you or Jessica answer that question?
How is the board selected? We work in a number of ways. We work through the community to find members from the community. We will also work with a number of professional organizations to recruit members to the board.
So who's we?
Who's we?
You said we. You said
We, the
we.
organization.
Who is we?
The executive director.
So the executive director selects the board, right?
No, the board selects the board. The executive director helps recruit members to the board, along with the more members, the current members of the board, and then the board members of the board select the new board members.
So the board is self-selecting. So the board decides who's going to be on the board, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And then how about the Richmond Rapid Response Fund? What is it? Is it a 501c3 nonprofit?
It is not. It's a fiscal project of the Ed Fund.
So it essentially is the Ed Fund, right?
No, it's its own entity.
Well, okay, so who runs it? Who's responsible for it?
Jessica, who's here, Jessica is the director of the Richmond Rapid Response Fund, and she can tell you about the governance structure.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi. So currently the R3F, the steering committee or the core committee of R3F are a committee of several organizations, 5 organizations that came together through the West Contra Costa Cares Coalition during the pandemic. And we've been in strong collaboration with the city from the inception of the fund.
So who selects the steering committee?
The original steering committee was a collaborative group of folks who came together to work. So that would be Ed Fund, RISE, Richmond Promise. The Rent Board is a part of that. Also work with the city planning department, as well as the Fund for Children and Youth.
Well, but what I'm trying to get to, who actually selects these people?
So at the time, it was a collaborative effort where folks came together, but the R3F, or the advisory, the RFP is actually calling for a new infrastructure that would engage community residents and to have a inclusive governing body. So the governing body came together as a working committee to create R3F originally. And so it has remained the core partners. And moving forward, the engagement process that will be coming through the strategic advisory is looking into elected governance that includes community residents who are impacted and recipients of the programming and investments of the fund.
So the public has no role in selecting either the steering committee of the Richmond Rapid Response Fund or the board of directors of the Ed Fund. Is that correct?
They have not, which is part of what the strategic plan actually includes, is a map to engage the role in that public.
Okay.
To have a public governance.
Councilor Bates, you've got a hand up.
Yes. Well, who do you report to and who oversee the project or the program? Is the city manager or whom? Are you independent?
Are you referring to who oversees the public funds that we're receiving from the city?
Your organization. You have a director there, as I presume, Mrs. Jessica. So who does she report to and who does she and the board and others report to? Are they independent of the city council, I presume?
We are independent of the city council as we are a fiscally sponsored project of the Ed Fund. I report to the core partners. I report to the core partners who are directors and leaders in leadership roles at RISE, Richmond Promise. Oh my goodness, excuse me.
Well, are you a city employee?
No, I'm not. I'm a fiscally sponsored project of the Ed Fund. So I am employed by the Ed Fund, and I report to my core committee. I also I've reported to the city council a couple times before. I report to the West Contra Costa Public Cares Coalition. And I report to the Ed Fund, which manages many contracts and monitors funding on a regular basis.
I think the question, if I may, I think the question you're getting at is how is the Ed Fund being responsible for the public funds that we're getting? Is that the question you're getting at?
Yes.
Yes. So so we have a contract with the city for the funds, and we've been working with the city over the last year to really identify, and the city has told us what are our reporting requirements for the funds. We have received, different contracts from the city from both the CARES Act in the past, and we've reported back how we've used the funds to the city, to the satisfaction of the city before, and we're prepared to do so again.
Okay.
Any other questions from council members? Do we have public speakers?
No, we do not.
So here's my concern about this. When people first started talking about the Richmond Rapid Response Fund, it was right at the time that COVID broke out. And it was really an emergency. A lot of people were losing their jobs. They were in danger of losing their housing. And you know, it was really tough times. And some people came to me and asked me if the mayor's office would support setting up a Richmond Rapid Response Fund. And I thought it was a good idea. I thought it was something that was really necessary. And I offered to put $25,000 from the mayor's community fund into the Richmond Rapid Response Fund as seed money to get it started. So the mayor's office was the first entity to actually contribute money to the Richmond Rapid Response Fund. And over the last couple of years, I think they've gone through about $1 million in grants, and that's fine. But what bothers me is that the Richmond Rapid Response Fund, which was originally supposed to be rapid response for a pandemic, has now morphed itself into becoming an organization to administer a guaranteed minimum income project. And I just don't think that's proper. I think that you know, neither the city council nor the people of Richmond have ever said that they want to start a guaranteed minimum income project. And if they have, then I wasn't there to hear it. I see Councilmember Johnson nodding his head. He must think they did, but that's you know, that's my basic concern, is that this has morphed into something it was never intended to be. So I see a couple of hands up now. Councilmember Willis and then Johnson. You guys want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the motion that we move staff's recommendation, but I also wanted to see if the city manager's amendment that she was trying to bring up during the last item could add to this. I believe families with children also get access to some resources to help be relocated. Am I reiterating that correctly, City Manager Curl?
Robert, does that work?
I guess just to clarify, this contract is not direct allocation to residents. This is to do a strategic plan to help guide the transition of R3F as a rapid response fund to a longer term plan that maybe looks more at providing guaranteed income or economic security for Richmond residents in the long term. So this is to pay a consultant to support that planning effort.
So what's your motion, Councilmember Willis?
I'm just gonna move the staff recommended item and to city manager's last amendment. I'll just set up a meeting with you a different time to discuss.
Okay. Is there a second?
I move the item.
Okay, we have a second from the vice mayor. Councilmember Johnson, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for you, not only were you there, but you voted in the affirmative. When we voted on the REI package, it received a unanimous vote from the entire council, including yourself, and it did include a basic income program, which started off in, I believe, CSD and was later partnered with R3F. So we were all there and we all voted for it.
Well, I must have missed that meeting. If you can find the meeting, and
I'll be more than happy to find that meeting and send you yourself voting in the affirmative as well.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's call the roll on this.
Councilmember Bates,
Yes.
Councilmember Jimenez,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
and Mayor Butt.
No.
The motion passes with Mayor Butt voting no.
So that brings us to F3, contract for Castro Encampment Resolution Project Manager. Would you read that item, please?
Yes, item F3 is to approve a contract with Way to Love, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $235,000 for a term beginning July 26th of 2022 and ending June 30th of 2024 to provide project management services for the Castro Encampment Resolution Project to be funded by the city's Encampment Resolution Funding Grant.
Okay, staff report, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Jesus Morales, the city's new housing manager, will be doing the presentation. KCRT, could you please put up the PowerPoint?
And was this the most recent PowerPoint I had forwarded to IT? Excuse me, KCRT?
This should be it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. The item before you is a contract for the Castro Encampment Resolution Project Manager. Next slide. Here's an overview of the Castro site. You'll see that triangular piece right in the middle of the picture there, right at the intersection of Castro Street and Hansley Drive. That's the Castro Encampment that you all are very familiar with. Next slide. So in December 2021, the city applied for an encampment resolution funding, seeking resources from the state of California to fund a local demonstration project. That was December 2021. In February 24, 2022, the city was provided a notice that they had been awarded a grant, and is one of 10 projects that was awarded a grant throughout the state. I'll also note that the city received the second highest amount of the grant for this program. On April 5, 2022, the City Council accepted and appropriated the $4.8 million from the Encampment Resolution Funding Grant to address the Castro Encampment. I should add to that a couple of weeks ago, we also received a check from the state for the $4.8 million. Next slide. So the city went through a procurement process in order to find a project manager for this a grant that we received. On June 3, 2022, we issued a request for qualifications via the city bids online system. The notice was sent out to 349 vendors, and there were 17 prospective bidders. We received 2 responses to the RFQ. These 2 responses were reviewed by city community development staff and a representative from the Contra Costa Health, Housing, and Homeless Services. In addition to reviewing the submitted responses, we also had 2 interviews that we held with each respondent on July 11 and July 12, 2022. Based on a review of the applications that were submitted and the interviews, Way to Love Incorporated was selected as the highest ranking respondent. Next slide. So the overall project goals and objectives of the grant are the following. 1, to deliver a number of services to the individuals currently living in the vehicle encampment near Castro and Hansley Street. 2, to move all encampment residents into stable housing by June 30th, 2023. 3, work with residents and neighborhood advisor groups. 4, provide regular updates to City Council and the public on project activities. 5, this will be something that can be refined and replicated as a model grounded in Housing First principles for use throughout the state. And lastly, this is a model whose success and the challenges that we'll be facing will be continuously evaluated, including by a third-party evaluator funded by the grant. Next slide. So the main activities at the encampment will be the following. 1, we want to secure the site with fencing, provide 24-hour security, and also a portable office for services for residents at the site. 2, we want to assess all the housing and health needs of the residents. 3, We will develop the housing plan for each of the residents to be able to place them in permanent housing as soon as possible. 4, we also want to provide job-related training and support to the residents once they get housed and during the period of time when we're also working with them on their assessments. And 3, post-sunset, we want to restore the site to its original trail use, adding site enhancements. Next slide. So this will be the project manager's primary responsibilities. They'll help develop program guidelines, policies, and metrics. They'll serve as the day-to-day project manager for the site. They will also lead the coordination of the site care team, comprised of various service providers. They will also engage Encampment residents in program development and execution. She will also engage in area residents and businesses in the project as part of the advisory group. They will also oversee the sunset strategy for the encampment. They will assist us in the review proposals for service providers that will continue to solicit. And lastly, complete required grant reporting and public information sharing. Next slide. So this is a picture of the organizational structure for this project. At the top, you see the City of Richmond, the Community Development Department, Community Development Director, Leah, and myself, the Housing Manager. Reporting to us will be the Castro Encampment Project Manager, Way to Love Incorporated, Director, Vanessa Calloway. And then reporting to Vanessa will be several of the areas where she'll be working with. She'll be working with a rapid housing navigator, the site manager, a core social worker, a core outreach specialist, and other services that will need to clean up the site, remove autos, provide security, items like that. Next slide. There's a slide before that. Thank you. So brief background about Way to Love Incorporated. Vanessa Calloway, the director of Way to Love Incorporated, has developed connections and collaborations with faith-based and other local nonprofit organizations to leverage support for the unhoused over the past 10 years that she has been working in Richmond. Way to Love has provided the unhoused, including those at the Castro Encampment, with hot meals, clothing, toiletries, tents, and blankets. Their mission and activities are to provide services and resources to the homeless population in Richmond, feeding, caring for the homeless community, battered women, and at-promise youth. Part of Vanessa's background includes job duties that included hiring, training, supervising staff, collaborating with internal and external groups, budgeting and performance reporting, developing relationships with the community and other stakeholders, and grant writing. In addition to reviewing the application and the interviews, we also checked references for Ms. Calloway. All of the references spoke highly of Ms. Calloway's work ethic, her compassion, her professionalism, skills related to managing teams and projects, budgetary and performance reporting, communication skills, and working with the community, her organizational skills, reliability, accountability, and her dedication to her work. Next slide. We are recommending that the City Council approve a contract with Way to Love for up to $235,000 for a term ending on June 30, 2024 to serve as the Castro Encampment Resolution Funding Project Manager. That concludes my presentation.
Are there any questions from council members?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr.
Go
Mayor.
ahead, Councilor Bates.
I recall conversations about the $4.8 million grant, but I don't recall any council member, at least I can't recall myself, being involved in the discussion of the expenditure of that. Now, is this staff driven, or why is it not council more involved in the decisions of the program that you've alluded to?
I can address. Oh,
Yeah, I'd like to hear from staff in terms of, you've come up with a program. You know, I've never been consulted, and maybe some of you others have, but I've never been consulted. Well, what do you think about this or this or that or that? So you come up with a program, and maybe you talk to a few council members. And now you expect everybody to bite into it and roll over without having any kind of involvement or any kind of recommendation before you come forward with a program that you now want us to rubber stamp.
So Councilmember Bates, when the application was initiated, we were required to develop a scope of work and a proposed budget. So that was done. And then when we presented following potential award, we shared with council the proposed program, which the council accepted the grant and appropriated the funds. So I'm happy to describe what the key efforts are, but the first is to secure the site, make sure that the encampment does not continue to grow. There are services that will be provided in terms of security as well as rapid rehousing services. And we've allocated within this program at least $1.8 million worth of flex funds that can be used to rehouse folks. And so, but yes, staff had to develop the application for the grant, and it was one of the 10 selected projects throughout the state.
You mentioned that the council had input into this. I don't recall, I don't think I missed a meeting. So what meeting did we have any input? All the input that I recall us having was that accepting a $4 million grant. And from there, you either communicated with a few here and there, but I don't know if any, I know I wasn't included in the discussion of how we should maybe go forward. Now you put a program together, and now you come and you give it to us, and you expect us to automatically support it without any kind of input. I'm not rubber stamping anything.
Mayor Bud, if I may, through you as the chair, Councilmember Bates, your points are well taken, but I do want to note that Ms. Velasco and Ms. Milam put together a grant application very quickly, very expeditiously, and then that was funded by the state. So I think that it would be prudent for us to have another study session when you all come back in September on all of the work that city staff have been doing regarding the unhoused and developing affordable housing in Richmond. But this was rushed and it was submitted.
Well, you were missing the point.
No,
I'm not complaining about you putting together the program that got the money. I'm talking about not being included in the decision-making process in terms of what programs and how it's going to be expended. Now you give it to us as a council and say, hey, this is what we're coming up with. Now rubber stamp it and vote it without any kind of suggestion or input from this council. And I highly resent that.
Well, Councilmember Bates, the components of the grant application are what's coming before you. That's what's coming before you. We're not trying to upset the council in any way, but the components of the grant are what is coming before you for approval.
All right, go ahead. I'm finished.
Councilmember Jimenez, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the information. I just have a question or a couple of questions. So what I understanding is that this is one of the components of how the money will be allocated, and that the city council will have the opportunity to weigh in the proposal. And what I understanding, and Lina, you can add more, is that the idea is that this contract will provide a coordinator for the grant because, and that will add capacity to city staff. So I just want you to answer why this won't be managed by the city and why we need to contract it out.
Yes, I appreciate the question, Councilmember Jimenez. So as the council knows, we're significantly understaffed. And so because there is a lot of reporting and accountability that needs to be attached to these public funds, plus the goal here is to develop a demonstration project for the state as a whole. So we are requesting, and it was planned as part of the original scope of work for the grant, to contract a project manager who could focus 100% of their time towards this project and helping people get rehoused and closing the encampment. So we've set up the goal of setting the encampment by June 2023 by rehousing everyone. And we think that in order to accomplish that, we do need to have a dedicated staff, a dedicated contractor to help manage the day-to-day, because there's so much that comes up and needs quick responses.
My last question before I got interrupted and cut off. Can you talk a little bit more about the experience and the knowledge that way to love, or the person who is going to be in this position, and why you think is the right person to do this work?
Sure. So Way to Love is a relatively new nonprofit. However, Ms. Calloway, their executive director, has been working in Richmond for the last 10 years in housing services mostly. So she is familiar with other nonprofits and service providers within the city, and particularly connecting people to resources that are available that could help leverage what we're bringing to the table through the grant. In addition, she is working currently, or Way to Love is working currently, with the unhoused as well as the faith-based community. I think as the council and the community can acknowledge, it's going to take a lot of effort from a lot of people to help deal with, the homelessness crisis we're all facing. And so, I think that Ms. Calloway is up for the challenge. She's understood the critiques we've gotten throughout the process of other encampment projects. And so she's committed to transparency as well as regular reporting to various stakeholders, including the area businesses and neighborhoods. So we're really looking forward to be able to see what a dedicated project manager can help in terms of moving these types of projects along, and the reporting that comes along with it.
And if I may just add, Ms. Velasco, Councilmember Jimenez, we're also going to provide additional support staff. We think that this, based on the conversation this evening, it's really clear to the council that this is a very important policy area. And so we will have an interdepartmental team that'll meet on a regular basis for both of the contracts that were before you this evening pertaining to the unhoused.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make a last comment, and is that we need to make sure that most of the money goes to the resident instead of just like staffing, more administration and more bureaucracy. I think like this is an opportunity to be creative, learn from what we did, like learn from Ryden Road and others, and really be creative to do really the right solutions for the people in Castro. So I am looking forward to hear what are the the ideas, and we can weigh in. So we have a successful transition of our on-house resident in Castro to a better situations of housing. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Vice Mayor, you have a question?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank the staff for the work that they've put in and the rapidity in which they did the previous agenda item with the R3F strategic planning. And on the Castro encampment, I understand that you also moved quickly, and these are issues that we need to move quickly on. I'm curious, what were the criteria that you used to evaluate the people that came forward?
So the criteria was specified in the RFP that was attached to the staff report, but in general, we wanted somebody who had good communication skills, you know, in addition had experience managing projects, had done grant reporting, grant writing, worked with partnerships. So there were a myriad of qualifications we were looking for. In addition, you know, there is a lot of competition right now as many cities are struggling with this issue. So as you know, the market is hot for people with deep experience in homelessness. And so, you know, I think, but in general, we were looking somebody that was a good communicator, was able to team build, and really just work towards a mission of for project implementation and reporting.
Okay, thank you. And I understand that the group that was evaluating the providers was supposed to have had someone with houseless experience, and that person did not show up because they reported that they couldn't make it the day before. So I understand how that creates issues, but wouldn't it have been better if you had several people lined up so that if one doesn't show up, another one could? Because there are quite a few people out there who could have contributed to the process.
Definitely, I think Vice Mayor, moving forward, we need to plan for that. I think we were not expecting. We had several conversations with this person, and they had committed and affirmed that they were available. And so we had shared materials, which they had reviewed in advance, and we just didn't think it was appropriate to bring somebody the same day who didn't have a chance to prepare or look at the materials. But I think moving forward for other RFPs and RFQs that we will have out, I think having multiple people with lived experience will be important to ensure that perspective is brought forward.
And then my final question is, how large is Way to Love? What sort of staff can we see them bringing forward in their efforts?
Yes, so Vanessa, if you're available to, but right now it's one, we're expecting one person with an admin aide that will be able to support the project. So right now that's one full-time position and then a part-time admin aide.
So basically what they'll be doing is ministerial work?
Well, the executive director would be the project manager. So they would be leading the site care team and then also doing all the grant reporting, but they would have an admin aide who could help prepare the reports for submitting to the city and stakeholders.
So this $235,000 is basically for administering programs. Is that correct?
At this point, yes, that's what we need. We need a project manager, somebody who can help lead this team, provide policy development, processes, reporting templates.
And do we have monies that will actually do the work?
Yes, this is only the 235 is a very small portion of the overall $4.8 million. We currently have an RFP that is out for rapid rehousing services. So if any service providers are available to support the city in that regard, we are looking for contractors. In addition, we released an RFQ today for other supportive services that could be the site coordinator, security services, workforce development, advocacy, and other areas for service. So we will bring forward additional contracts, as City Manager Curl mentioned. This is just the first provider, but there will be other contracts that we'll bring forward in September.
Okay, I understand the importance of this, and I will be voting in the affirmative, but in the future, I think it would have been easier for me to give a quicker yes if I had have known the scope of the work, if I had have known the organizations that will be coordinated by Way to Love.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson, go ahead.
No, yeah, I just wanted to say, I am familiar with Way to Love as well as with Miss Vanessa Calloway, who does fantastic work here in the city of Richmond. And it was very great to see that this organization was selected because I know at the very least the money is going to be spent how it's supposed to. Miss Calloway is a very honest woman. And with that, I'm more than happy to move the item. Honest and capable.
I'll second it with you, but we got some public
speakers.
Yeah,
we have. Yeah.
Well, okay, we have a motion and a second. I had some questions, and then we may have public speakers. I don't know. So, my question is, based on the PowerPoint you provided, you said the interviews were conducted by somebody from the county and somebody from city staff. Who specifically was that? How many people were involved in the interview process?
So there were several. So Jesus, do you want to go through the names?
Yes, there were 3 city staff. There were 2 city staff, myself, and Caitlin Quackenbush, who is a fellow that has been assigned to the city to work with us. Also, we had Christy from Contra Costa County Health Services was other reviewers. So altogether, there was 3 of us.
Well, there were 3 of you. Did you guys have any kind of score sheet, or did you have any kind of questions in a score sheet that you used?
Yes, sir. We had a list of approximately 10 questions that we asked of the interviewees. In addition, in the follow-up interview that we had with each of the respondents, we had another series of questions for them. I'd say 6 or 8 questions. And then we ranked them since we only had the 2 respondents. We ranked them either 1 and 2 for each of the questions and used that as the basis for determining who was the highest ranked candidate.
So did you assign a score to each one?
We just ranked them 1 and 2. So it was on the basis of whether they were 1 and 2 for each question, and then what that came out to at the end.
When you added it all up, what did it come out to?
I think that the score was very close, something like 10 and 11. And that was why we had the personal interviews to follow the original ranking, just to get a better.
Well, it would have been nice to share with the council more information about the interview and who conducted it and how people were scored and what the score was and that kind of thing. Usually we get to see that when we interview, contractors. That's all. Typically, that's all been part of a staff report. So going down to the assignment itself, I'm not sure I understand exactly how this works. This contract is for $235,000, and the total grant is for 4.8 million. So does this person have, not person, organization, I should say, this nonprofit, do they have authority to spend any of the money that it takes to fulfill the task that they're assigned to do in their contract? Let me give you an example. Let's see, coordinating the Castro site care team, including managing roles, responsibilities, and reporting. So do they have, and here's another one, place 10 to 20 residents through housing assistance. So do they have any authority to spend any money besides what they're getting paid for their own time?
No, Mayor, the contract is just for the project management services, which will be
So
billed.
who's responsible for that? I mean, there's gonna be all the same stuff there is at Ryden and everywhere else. There's gonna be security, there's gonna be cleanup, there's gonna be, all those kind of, who's in charge of that?
So we are still in the process, going through the procurement process of selecting the other service providers. So the council will be approving those contracts because in most cases, if not all, the cost will exceed $10,000.
So will this contractor be responsible for coordinating them and telling them what to do and that kind of thing?
Yes, in conjunction with city staff, but they will be the day-to-day contact. So as issues arise and policies need to be developed, they will reach out to us if there's a policy direction needed, but they will be developing the day-to-day reporting and management.
So there's a lot of tasks here. Meet with city housing manager, provide project goals, implement the encampment resolution project, complete resident assessments, needs and priorities, coordinate the Castro site care team, engage neighboring residents, establish community advisory group, and then it goes on to say eventually place all the residents in housing. And you're providing about a year to do that, right?
Yes, a little bit under a year, yes.
Okay, so the only thing in here about compensation is that work will be billed on a T&M basis not to exceed $235,000. Fully loaded hourly rate shall be $58.75 an hour. So at $235,000, that'll pay one person full-time about 2 years, or 2 people for a year. So you mentioned something about an administrative aid. Does that aid also get $58.75 an hour?
No.
Well, how much do they get?
Well, right now it's fully loaded. That's the hourly rate for the executive director. If they feel like they need an admin aid to support the work, then that cost is included.
So I don't understand that. It's got to come out. I mean, I don't understand how that works. So you're gonna pay the director $59 an hour, and if she needs help, she's just gonna have to get it for free, right?
Well,
she's gonna have to pay somebody else to do it, right? That's gonna
well,
come out
in most cases, what subcontractors will do is they charge an admin fee of 10% that they mark up. But here in this case, we've added the full hourly rate includes the admin support that she needs for the program.
So when you get a bill from the contractor, it might say something like, this month spent 160 hours at $59 an hour. Do you expect to get a bill for the admin aid also?
No.
No.
Mayor, but the points that you're making about the contracts are well taken. I've asked HR to work with the respective bargaining units and then go through the personnel board to develop a contract compliance role. I think it's obvious based on the discussions that we've been having with the council that we need to have better terms and conditions in the contracts, better schedules for performance. And so that is on the to-do list for HR.
So I'll go back to the previous question. That is that at $59 an hour, $235,000 will pay for somebody full-time for 2 years. But this project's got to wrap up in 1 year. So how is one person gonna work 16 hours a day for 2 years on this? How does that work?
No, Mayor, as we mentioned earlier, and Jesus reviewed, she is just the project manager, or Way to Love is doing the project management services. There is a site care team, and that site care team will provide its services, which includes the core social worker, the core outreach specialist, the site coordinator.
You're paying her $235,000 at $59 an hour, which comes to 4,000 hours. And this project's supposed to be wrapped up in a year. It doesn't compute. The arithmetic doesn't work out.
Well, the overall grant project performance period is through June 2024. Our goal is to rehouse folks, but there may still be some case management work, as well as we have to do the site restoration. As the council may know, that the Castro site is a link or a portion of the Bay Trail is on the site. And so our goal is post sunsetting of the encampment to make some site enhancements. So they will help oversee that portion of the project.
So for the first year, you would not expect her to bill more than half of this 235,000, right?
Correct.
That's 2,000 hours.
Yeah, so it says up to. They are not required to expend the full amount. If we find that additional time and resources are needed, adjustments can be made to the performance schedule to accelerate some of the activities. But we'll be coming back to the council hopefully in September and October with additional service providers and a more detailed overview of what the Castro Encampment grant will do.
Well, I don't want to disparage the person who's doing this. She may be highly qualified. She may do a great job, and I'll confess I don't have any insight into that. But I did look up the Way to Love on Spark Point and the Secretary of State's office, and apparently it was just established as a nonprofit in 2022. You're aware of that, right?
I think it was in 2021.
Okay. And so what other projects on the scale of $4.8 million has this organization managed?
We're not aware of other similar grant projects that they've managed. They currently are doing.
How do you determine that they're qualified to do this if they've never done anything like this before?
So again, Mayor, we looked at the skill set that the executive director is bringing to the table from previous work experience and other projects that they manage on behalf of their employers. And so we know that they are in the housing space and have been working on other grants for their employers in the past. So they do bring experience to the table.
What's the largest project they've ever managed before? Do you know?
Jesus?
I can't answer that. But I would just add to what Lena was saying is it wasn't any specific program or project, but rather the sum of all the different experiences that they bring to the table. We're hiring Way to Love for this contract. Way to Love is, in all intents and purposes, Ms. Calloway is the person that has the experience. If she had not formed the nonprofit organization, she could have responded to the applicant as a single individual for this project manager position, and we would be looking at the same criteria for her as an individual. So as you noted, Way to Love is a brand new nonprofit. They don't have any history to speak of. This will be the first project that would be done under Way to Love, but it's Ms. Calloway as the director of Way to Love is the person that we're looking at to really manage
Well,
the program.
I'm a little concerned about on-the-job training. You know, we've had some really bad luck with our contractors working on these homeless projects. Some of you may disagree, but you know, the people who were hired to do Ryden Road have failed miserably, and the people who were hired to do the next project failed miserably. And so you know, I would kind of think that you'd want to look a little closer at who you're hiring to do the third project. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I know where this is going. Do we have any public speakers?
Yes, we do.
Okay, go ahead and call.
We currently have 3 speakers. They are phone number ending in 0188, Amanda Jenkins and Leticia Chavez. Phone number ending in 0188. You may begin. Please state your name.
Eleanor Thompson, and I'm just surprised how this person is kind of not people. I mean, the mayor talking against her so much, and she did not get $1.8 million. SOS was awarded money, and nobody asked any questions, and he was just new on the block. He's been out here doing the work. We've seen her do the work. Thanks to Councilmember Demolish Johnson for speaking out for her, that he knows her work. We knew nothing about SOS work. The only thing he ever did was the same projects that I did in North Richmond, clean up the street, and he was awarded $1.8 million, and nobody know where the money went. Ryden Road is still asking and letting you know they never received any services from that project. So why are we so against Vanessa, who I do not know? I only know her from seeing her on the Homeless Task Force event. But I think I think she should be awarded. I don't think that it should be denied. Give her a chance to prove herself if she has not proved herself to you. I believe she can do the job. We need dedicated people and concerned people who are concerned about the homeless population, not who are just out there to get the money and don't do anything. The homeless folks at Ryden Road has continually come before the council and said they got no service. So what happened to the money? Councilman Bates said he never got a report as to what happened to the money. No one is concerned about finding out what happened to the money. And I think you should research that and give Ms. Vanessa.
Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Amanda Jenkins.
Hello. So as the founder of the Castro Encampment and the only one who managed or anything else at the Castro Encampment for over a year by myself, with maybe a small amount of help from SOS and collaborating Leah Murray for the trash pickup. I was the only one there for a year, and I did a much better job than anyone that was hired to do anything at Castro. I just sent pictures to Mayor Butt about 10 minutes ago that would back that up, so you could see the evidence in that. It was a lovely place to be over here. Nobody even knew about Castro because it wasn't a problem. Until $1.8 million was allocated to these people for the managing and trash and all that stuff, we were fine. But once you brought them in and that 1.8 million, it went to shit. And that's what you see right now. Excuse my language. But that's what I needed to use to show how frustrated I am in this situation. As far as somebody with lived experience being at the interview process, I definitely believe that I should have been there. I'm definitely the one you should talk to about anything that has to do with Castro, because I'm the only one that's been on the ground floor for the last years. The only one that's been a constant in their life, the only one that's advocated for them and the only one that continues to do it every time. Vanessa Calloway is wonderful. I love Vanessa Calloway. I believe that she also could do the job. In no way am I saying anything different. But if anybody should have been at that hiring process, it definitely should have been me. I'm definitely capable of managing that whole entire site like I did before. The stuff you see today, that's what that $1.8 billion got you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Leticia Chavez.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for letting me share. I'm here so I can ask you to please approve the money for the services that are incoming. The city imposed to the North Richmond residents when it allowed the incoming to happen, knowing that North Richmond is a very distressed neighborhood, and an incoming was allowed with no services, without any input for the core community neither. So please, it's time to work and choose somebody, set some rules, set some accountability from whoever is gonna do the job, and make this money work. The money is there, we need your help. When we drive sometimes by Richmond Parkway, there is sometimes trash on the road that is not safe for anybody. In that place, the way that residents are living at the Encampment is not safe for them either. So please help the residents of the Encampment and help out the residents of the neighborhood to get, a better place and to have a better life for them too. So thank you.
Thank you. And that was our last public speaker.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep, call the question.
Did you want to say something, Councilmember Jimenez, before we vote?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just my concern with these is that what I am hearing is that this money is going to personnel and providers, and I am worried that then it won't go directly to the most impacted, the unhoused resident in Castro. So I understand the need for having a person who can manage this and adding a staffing or capacity to the staff. I understand that. But what I am concerned is that the things that I am hearing about, all of these or RFP and all of these other things are just going to personnel and providers and not to the solutions that is needed to really make sure that we have housing solutions for the people who are living in Castro. And I don't want, like, when Lena talk about $2 million to go directly, well, it's $4.8 million. So the other is going to providers and all these things instead of more to direct the solution that are needed. So I am hoping that adding capacity to manage this grant provides a space for creative solutions to be able to have a pilot project here that can be an example for the states. But if we are going to just spend the money, as always, we need to learn to have a better process and so we can be successful in the time that you are planning. Thank you.
Councilmember Bates, go ahead.
I'm not opposed to the lady, whomever she may be. I never met her, don't know her. She may be the greatest one in the world, but I'm concerned about the process. This city has always sent out bids and allowed individuals to compete and come forward and make a presentation. And had that been done, that would have been to my satisfaction. The second is I don't appreciate not being provided information as we go forward and think that I'm going to rubber stamp whatever the staff put underneath my nose. So for those reasons, I'll be voting no.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond to one of the comments?
Please do.
So Councilmember Bates, just to clarify, we did issue an RFQ, request for qualifications, as through the city's bids online system. So we did notify 349 potential vendors of this opportunity. We only received 2 responses, one of which was from Way to Love.
Well, that's refreshing to know. But you never consulted, you never communicated. With me, maybe you, and I wouldn't be surprised, you communicated with other members on the council, but I didn't know a thing about what was coming down the pipe until you put it on the agenda today.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's call the roll. Let's vote on this.
Councilmember Bates?
No.
Mayor Butt,
Wait, City Manager, you got something before we finish this?
I just wanted to make sure that we have clarification and authorization to make, staff can make amendments to the contract to ensure satisfactory performance and achieve metrics.
Does the maker of motion recognize that?
Yes.
And the seconder?
Yes.
Okay, all right, go ahead. Thank you.
Councilmember Bates?
No.
Councilmember Jimenez?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Willis?
Yes.
And Mayor Butt?
No.
The motion passes with Mayor Butt and Councilmember Bates voting no.
Okay, I believe that winds up this session, and I'm prepared to adjourn it unless somebody's got a reason I shouldn't.
I'd like to adjourn the meeting. A good friend of mine and a sad one, probably one of the greatest basketball players that ever lived, Bill Russell. I had the privilege of knowing him and his brother for several years, and he was just an outstanding person, and was sorry to see him gone, and condolences to his family. Thank you.
Okay,
basketball against them Oakland boys, huh, Nat?
Yeah.
Did you ever go one-on-one with him now?
No, he was interesting enough, he wasn't that good in high school, and a guy named Phil Woolford at USL found something in him and made him an All-American, made him a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
Well, I just want to remind the public to stay safe. This monkeypox thing ain't no joke. It's getting serious out here. So y'all, let's stay as safe as possible. And if you can get vaccinated, let's get vaccinated, because it's ugly.
Okay, I'll see you all in September. I hope not before.
Happy recess.
All right. Have a great weekend and have a great vacation.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a great recess, everybody. Don't cry a lot.